She signed the divorce papers at her mother's grave. He handed her the envelope while they were still lowering the casket. The priest was mid-prayer. The dirt hadn't even settled, and her husband of 3 years, the father of the child growing inside her, slid the papers across without a word, his eyes already somewhere else. "Sign it," he said. "It's better this way." Her name is Claire Dawson. She was 8 months pregnant, standing at her mother's graveside in a black dress she could barely zip. And in that moment, the two people she loved most in the world, one of them was 6 feet underground, and the other had just handed her a manila envelope and called it closure. What Nathan didn't know, what nobody knew, was what Claire's mother had left behind. And what was coming for him? He never saw it coming. Before we get there, make sure you subscribe and watch until the very end, because what happens next will change how you see everything. Let's go. The cemetery was quiet the way a held breath is quiet, heavy, suspended, waiting to break. Claire stood at the edge of her mother's grave, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clutching a single white rose. Dorothy Calloway was gone. The woman who raised her, protected her, loved her without conditions. The woman who worked 30 years as a quiet bookkeeper for small businesses and drove a 15-year-old car and clipped grocery coupons, gone. Nathan stood beside her, rigid and distant. She reached for his hand. He didn't take it. Then came the envelope. "Divorce papers," he said flatly. "I already signed." The words hit her like a physical collapse. The ground felt unstable. The priest's voice kept going, but Claire heard nothing except the ringing in her own ears. "You're doing this here?" Her voice cracked. "My mother just died. I'm carrying your baby." Nathan's jaw tightened. Waiting would only make it harder. That's when she saw them, his parents, standing 30 feet away under an umbrella nobody needed. Arms folded, satisfied smiles. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. They'd chosen the lowest moment of her life as the staging ground for her removal. "I'm with someone else now," Nathan said. "She's pregnant. She needs me." "She's pregnant." Claire's knees almost buckled. The woman from his office. The text she'd found and been called paranoid for questioning. It had been going on for months. And now Claire was standing at a grave 8 months along, being told she'd been replaced. Nathan walked back to his parents, who greeted him with approving nods like he'd done something honorable. Claire stood alone at the graveside as the dirt began to fall. She knelt in her dress, not caring about the mud, and pressed her hand to the earth. "I don't know what to do, Mom." But then something shifted inside her, something cold and clear and unbreakable. Never let them see you break. 5 days after the funeral, Claire found it. She was searching her mother's desk for an address book, anyone who might help her figure out what came next. The drawer stuck. When she forced it open, an envelope fell out from underneath. Cream-colored, sealed, her name in her mother's handwriting. Inside was a letter and a small key. "My darling Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I pray you never needed this letter, but I know the world, I know the people around you, and I prepared." In safe deposit box 447 at First Atlanta Bank, you'll find documents that will change everything. Accounts, properties, investments. I've spent 30 years building something no one knows about, and I built it for you. For exactly this moment when people show you who they truly are. Trust no one until they've earned it. Protect yourself. Protect my grandchild. And remember, patience is the most powerful weapon you'll ever hold. Show them what a Calloway woman is made of. All my love, Mom. Claire read it 3 times. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dorothy Calloway, bookkeeper, coupons, second-hand furniture, what accounts, what properties? She drove straight to the bank. The safe deposit room was cold and still. When the attendant left her alone, Claire's hands trembled so badly she nearly couldn't fit the key. Inside the box were folders, legal documents, account statements, property deeds, and numbers that didn't compute. $500 million. Claire sat in that room for 2 hours and barely moved. Commercial real estate across 3 states, stakes in tech startups, investment portfolios that had compounded for decades. A woman who drove a 15-year-old car had quietly built one of the most sophisticated private fortunes anyone had ever hidden. At the bottom of the box was a second letter. "You're in shock. Good. Use it." These assets are structured so that Nathan has 0 claim to any of them. His family has no power here. Take your time, learn everything. Then, when you're ready, show them exactly what they lost. 2 months later, the Four Seasons Grand Ballroom held 500 of Atlanta's most powerful people. The event was called the Dorothy Calloway Foundation Inaugural Gala. Claire arrived exactly on time, navy dress, composed, 8 weeks postpartum and radiating the kind of calm that made people step aside without knowing why. Nathan was already there. So was Melissa, the woman he'd left Claire for. So were his parents, stiff in their designer clothes, trying to read the room. At 8:30, Claire took the stage. 3 months ago, she began, her voice steady and clear, I buried my mother, and while they were lowering her casket, my husband handed me divorce papers. I was 8 months pregnant. He told me it was better this way. The room went completely silent. Then came the screen. Text messages between Nathan and Melissa, time-stamped 9 months before the funeral. The affair had started a full year before he'd told Claire she was paranoid for asking questions. Then, a text from Melissa to a friend where she admitted the pregnancy was fake. She called it her insurance policy. She laughed about how easy Nathan had been to manipulate. Then, bank records showing Nathan's mother had wired Melissa $10,000 3 weeks before Dorothy's funeral. The ballroom erupted. Nathan stood up. His chair scraped loud across the floor. "Sit down, Nathan," Claire said calmly into the microphone. "I'm not finished." He sat. "My mother knew this was coming. She died knowing what was being done to me, and she spent 30 years making sure I wouldn't be left with nothing. She left me the tools to fight back, not with anger, not with cruelty, just the truth revealed at the right moment." She paused. "Tonight isn't about destroying anyone. It's about honoring my mother by proving what she believed. That patience is the most powerful weapon a woman can carry." She stepped back from the podium to a standing ovation. Nathan stood frozen at his table. Melissa had already slipped out the side door. His parents looked like they'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Later, Nathan found Claire near the exit. "Please," he said quietly. "Just 5 minutes." She looked at him, this man she had once loved completely, who had handed her divorce papers at her mother's grave and called it kindness. "You made assumptions about who I was," she said. "About who my family was, about what I was worth. Those assumptions were wrong, and that's not my fault, Nathan, that's yours." She picked up her clutch. "My daughter's name is Dorothy, after my mother. She'll grow up hearing stories about her grandmother's patience, her intelligence, and her love. She won't hear stories about you unless she asks. And if she does, I'll tell her the truth, that her father made choices that hurt people and that choices always have consequences." She walked out into the Atlanta night without looking back. Dorothy Calloway spent 30 years building something invisible, not because she was hiding, but because she was protecting. She knew the world her daughter was walking into. She knew that kindness gets mistaken for weakness. That pregnant women get left. That grief gets weaponized. So she built walls around her daughter before the attack ever came, and she never said a word because saying a word would have changed the game. If you're a woman carrying a life inside you right now, or if you've ever been told you were too much and not enough at the same time, this story is for you. You are not what someone else decided to walk away from. You are what they will spend the rest of their lives wishing they hadn't. Drop a below if this hit you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories about women who refuse to stay down, subscribe. The next one is already waiting.